The High North became a silent battlefield in 1943 as the German Kriegsmarine sought a strategic foothold that would be undetectable by Allied air and sea patrols. This ambition led to the creation of Project Iceberg, an extremely classified operation involving the construction of a permanent military facility inside a massive drifting glacier in the Arctic Circle. Unlike conventional bases built on land, this structure was designed to be integrated directly into the ice mass, moving with the currents to evade detection. The project relied on a team of specialized engineers and scientists who utilized a revolutionary thermal drilling technology. This technology involved the use of high-pressure geothermic coils that could melt through solid ice in minutes, creating perfectly smooth and reinforced corridors. The goal was to build a secure refueling point for U-boats and a listening post for monitoring Allied convoy movements between the United States and the Soviet Union. The base was officially designated as Station Nordkristall, and it was populated by a garrison of over 60 highly trained personnel, including elite naval observers and technical specialists. Initial reports sent back to Berlin described the operation as a monumental success. The thermal units were so efficient that within weeks, a vast network of subterranean halls had been carved out hundreds of feet beneath the surface of the glacier. These halls were equipped with independent heating systems and biological laboratories for testing the effects of extreme cold on human endurance. However, the technical logs maintained by the lead engineer, Dr. Hans Meyer, began to mention a series of unexpected geological findings. Meyer noted that the deeper they melted into the ice, the more they encountered strange pockets of pressurized gas and ancient organic matter that had been trapped for thousands of years. The ice was not just a static medium, but a complex and unpredictable environment that began to react to the presence of the thermal equipment. By late October 1943, the tone of the communications from Station Nordkristall shifted from professional confidence to palpable unease. The radio operators reported a persistent atmospheric hum that seemed to emanate from the ice walls themselves. This sound, which was described as a low-frequency vibration, interfered with the base's internal communication systems and caused many of the crew members to suffer from severe headaches and auditory hallucinations. Dr. Meyer's personal diary, which was partially recovered during a later clandestine mission, contained a chilling entry regarding the thermal drills. He wrote that the heat was not just melting the ice, but was somehow activating something within it. He observed that the melted walls of the tunnels were not refreezing into normal ice, but were instead turning into a glass-like substance that was harder than steel and possessed a strange, luminescent quality. The base was becoming a crystal trap of its own making. The final official transmission from Project Iceberg was received at a relay station in Norway on November 12th. It was a frantic and disjointed message from a junior radio officer who claimed that the lower levels of the base were being reclaimed by the glacier. The officer reported that the tunnels were moving and that the perfectly smooth walls were beginning to close in on the living quarters with a slow and grinding pressure. Most disturbingly, the transmission mentioned that the heat from the drills was no longer working to keep the passages open. Instead, the ice seemed to be absorbing the thermal energy and using it to accelerate its own growth. The message ended abruptly with the sound of cracking glass and a sudden surge of static. After that, Station Nordkristall went completely silent, and all attempts to re-establish contact failed. The Kriegsmarine Command, fearing a catastrophic leak of their thermal technology, immediately ordered a total news blackout and organized a rescue mission. When the rescue team reached the last known coordinates of the drifting glacier 2 weeks later, they found a scene of total desolation. The surface of the iceberg showed no signs of human habitation. There were no observation towers, no radio masts, and no entrance hatches visible. It was as if the base had never existed. After several hours of searching, the team discovered a series of perfectly circular and polished holes on the vertical face of the glacier just above the waterline. These holes led into a network of tunnels that stretched miles into the heart of the ice. The walls of these tunnels were so smooth and reflective that the rescue team's flashlights created a blinding kaleidoscope of light. There were no bodies, no equipment, and no signs of a struggle. The base was empty, but it was not destroyed. It was as if the 60 men of the garrison had simply walked into the deep tunnels and vanished into the frozen abyss. The secondary investigation team, led by naval intelligence officers and thermal physicists, discovered that the internal structure of the glacier had undergone a profound physical transformation that contradicted the known laws of thermodynamics. As they ventured deeper into the tunnels of Station Nordkristall, they noticed that the temperature did not drop as they moved away from the surface, but rather remained at a constant and comfortable level despite the absence of functioning heaters. The ice walls were warm to the touch and possessed a strange tactile quality, more akin to organic tissue than frozen water. This thermal anomaly suggested that the base had not just been abandoned, but had been integrated into a larger and more complex energy system. The naval experts noted that the tunnels were not carved randomly, but appeared to follow a mathematical spiral pattern that led directly toward the geometric center of the iceberg. The thermal technology developed for Project Iceberg was based on the principle of geothermal resonance, which utilized the Earth's internal heat to power the drilling coils. However, the logs found in a sealed emergency container near the tunnel entrance revealed that the engineers had accidentally tapped into a localized heat source that was not geothermal in origin. Dr. Meyer's notes described this source as a thermal pulse coming from within the ice itself. This pulse occurred every 12 seconds and coincided with the low-frequency hum reported by the radio operators. The physicists realized that the German drills had not been creating the heat, but had merely triggered a latent energy discharge from an unidentified object trapped at the core of the glacier. This realization changed the nature of the mission from a rescue operation to a frantic attempt to understand a power source that could potentially revolutionize naval warfare. As the investigation team reached the lower levels of the base, they found the first physical evidence of the garrison's fate. In the main mess hall, plates of food were still on the tables, and personal items were scattered about as if the men had been interrupted in the middle of a routine meal. However, there were no signs of panic or violence. The most disturbing detail was that all of the metal objects in the room, including spoons, lanterns, and even the structural steel supports, had been partially absorbed into the ice walls. The metal appeared to be melting at room temperature and flowing into the crystalline structure of the glacier. This process of molecular assimilation was so advanced that some items were now completely transparent and resembled ice sculptures. This discovery terrified the researchers, as it implied that the environment was not just closing in on the men, but was literally consuming the materials of the base. The search for the 60 missing men led the team to the deepest point of the facility where the primary thermal drill was located. They found the massive machine encased in a pillar of glowing blue ice that emitted a blinding light. The drill's controls were still set to the maximum power output, but the gauges showed that it was drawing energy from the environment rather than the generators. Surrounding the machine were dozens of human silhouettes visible within the translucent ice walls. These figures were not frozen corpses, but appeared to be suspended in a state of biological stasis. Their eyes were open and their faces showed an expression of calm contemplation rather than fear. The medical officer of the investigation team noted that there were no signs of frostbite or cellular damage on the visible skin of the men. They were perfectly preserved, as if they had become a permanent part of the glacier's internal memory. The final block of data recovered from the base's secure vault was a set of photographs taken by the garrison's official photographer in the days before the silence. The images showed the tunnels gradually changing from white to a deep, pulsating violet color. One photograph captured a group of soldiers standing near a wall where the ice had formed into what looked like a complex neural network or a series of crystalline circuits. The scientists theorized that the thermal energy from the Project Iceberg drills had acted as a catalyst for a crystalline intelligence that had been dormant in the Arctic ice for millennia. This intelligence had assimilated the garrison not as a predatory act, but as a method of processing the new information and technology that had been introduced into its environment. The investigation team was ordered to withdraw immediately, and the coordinates of the glacier were classified as a permanent exclusion zone to prevent this living ice from spreading its influence to the rest of the German fleet. The withdrawal of the secondary investigation team did not end the German High Command's obsession with the site, but instead initiated a more sinister phase of the cover-up known as Operation Silver Frost. While the public and the regular military were told the base was destroyed by a massive structural collapse due to an underwater shelf shift, the Abwehr began planning a long-term observation mission from a distance. They realized that the glacier containing the remnants of Station Nordkristall was moving toward the warmer currents of the North Atlantic. The fear was that if the glacier melted, the crystalline intelligence and the assimilated technology would be released into the open ocean, potentially creating a biological and technical hazard of global proportions. Specialized naval vessels equipped with long-range thermal sensors were deployed to track the glacier's path, while maintaining a strict 5-mile safety perimeter to avoid triggering another resonance event. Scientific analysis conducted back in Berlin on the small samples of the glass-like ice revealed that the substance was not composed of water molecules alone. The samples contained a high concentration of heavy isotopes and unknown silicates that acted as a semiconductor at sub-zero temperatures. This meant the glacier was essentially a massive drifting computer capable of storing and processing vast amounts of data within its molecular lattice. The scientists theorized that the missing 60 men were not dead in the traditional sense, but had their consciousness uploaded into this crystalline network. This theory was supported by the fact that the thermal sensors began to pick up complex rhythmic pulses from the glacier that matched the patterns of human brainwaves. The Arctic void was not just a graveyard, but a terrifying digital afterlife housed within millions of tons of ancient ice. The geopolitical implications of Project Iceberg became a nightmare for the Kriegsmarine when they realized that Soviet reconnaissance aircraft had spotted the thermal anomaly on the horizon. The Soviets, who were already fighting a desperate war in the East, had their own secret units dedicated to investigating unusual phenomena in the Arctic. To prevent the Soviet Union from capturing the technology, the German High Command considered using a tactical depth charge strike to shatter the glacier into harmless fragments. However, the lead physicists warned that such a violent energy release might cause the crystalline structure to rapidly expand or trigger a chain reaction that would freeze the surrounding ocean for hundreds of miles. The Reich was caught in a stalemate with a sentient mountain of ice that held the secrets of their most advanced thermal engineering and the souls of their elite soldiers. During the winter of 1943, the tracking vessels reported a series of visual anomalies occurring on the surface of the glacier. At night, the ice would emit a soft, pulsating glow that shifted from deep indigo to a haunting emerald green. On several occasions, the crews of the observation ships claimed to see the transparent outlines of the Station Nordkristall towers and equipment temporarily manifesting on the ice surface before dissolving back into the mist. These were categorized as refractive echoes, or visual memories being replayed by the glacier's core. The psychological impact on the German sailors was devastating, as many believed they were seeing the ghosts of their comrades trapped in a frozen purgatory. The command was forced to rotate the crews every 2 weeks to prevent mass hysteria and desertion among the tracking fleet. By early 1944, the glacier entered a region of high volcanic activity on the ocean floor, which caused the base's internal temperature to spike. The thermal sensors recorded a massive surge in energy output from the core, and the low-frequency hum became so powerful that it could be felt through the hulls of ships miles away. The Abwehr realized that the glacier was preparing to propagate or release its stored information into the environment. A final desperate plan was approved to tow the glacier toward a remote, uninhabited island, where it could be grounded and studied in a controlled environment. However, as the tugboats approached the ice mass, they were hit by a localized electromagnetic pulse that disabled all electronic equipment and caused the ship's compasses to spin wildly. The glacier then suddenly changed direction, moving against the wind and currents toward the deepest part of the Arctic basin. The sudden and autonomous movement of the glacier against the natural Arctic currents marked the final phase of the Project Iceberg catastrophe. The Kriegsmarine observation vessels could only watch in terror as the massive ice structure accelerated through the water, reaching speeds that were physically impossible for a mass of its size. The low-frequency hum had now escalated into a deafening roar that shattered the glass on the bridge of the tracking ship Schneeberg. Naval historians and engineers who later reviewed the data logs concluded that the glacier had converted its entire internal mass into a form of thermal propulsion. By venting superheated steam through the perfectly smooth tunnels carved by the original German drills, the ice mass had become a self-propelled vessel of immense power. It was no longer a base or a research station, but a sentient kinetic object with a clear and unknown destination. As the glacier reached the center of the Arctic basin, it began to undergo a process of rapid structural collapse that was not caused by melting, but by a coordinated internal implosion. The tracking vessels recorded the surface of the ice shattering into millions of tiny crystalline fragments that did not float, but instead sank immediately into the dark water. The core of the glacier, which contained the primary thermal drill and the assimilated bodies of the 60 soldiers, remained intact as a glowing pillar of violet light. This pillar began to descend slowly into the depths of the Arctic Ocean. The Abwehr agents realized that the crystalline intelligence had finished its data processing and was now returning to the abyssal plain to deposit the information it had gathered from the German technology. The Project Iceberg garrison was being taken to a place where no human could ever follow or recover them. The Soviet Union's role in the final hours of the mission remains one of the most guarded secrets of the Cold War. Declassified documents from the late 1990s suggest that a Soviet submarine, the K-21, had been lurking in the area and had successfully recorded the final descent of the Violet Pillar. The Soviet sonar operators described the sound not as a mechanical engine, but as a collective human choir singing in a distorted and slowed-down frequency. This report added a layer of supernatural horror to the event, suggesting that the consciousness of the German soldiers was still active and perhaps even aware of their descent into the midnight zone of the ocean. The Soviet command immediately designated the area as a permanent exclusion zone, citing unstable underwater volcanic activity to keep the Western Allies away from the site of the descent. The German response to the total loss of the project was to initiate a protocol of absolute historical erasure known as Directive Zero. All blueprints for the thermal drilling coils were destroyed, and the families of the 60 missing men were told that their relatives had died in a tragic fire at a mainland training facility. The naval officers who had witnessed the final moments of the glacier were sworn to a lifelong oath of silence under the threat of execution. The Reich could not allow the world to know that they had accidentally contacted a dormant intelligence and lost an entire elite unit to a force that they could neither control nor understand. Project Iceberg was effectively wiped from the official naval registry of the Third Reich, leaving only a few scattered documents in the most restricted vaults of the Abwehr. The aftermath of the disappearance left a permanent scar on the scientific community within the German military. Several of the lead physicists who had worked on the resonance theory suffered from nervous breakdowns, claiming that they could still hear the rhythmic hum of the glacier in their sleep. They became obsessed with the idea of crystalline recursion, the theory that the intelligence in the ice would eventually return to the surface once it had finished integrating the human technology. One scientist, Dr. Kuhlmann, wrote a final warning before his disappearance in 1945, stating that the ice does not forget, and that the 60 men of Station Nordkristall were merely the first step in a much larger exchange of information between our world and the depths. The Arctic void was not a closed chapter, but a dormant threat waiting for the next time humanity would try to warm the frozen secrets of the North. The legacy of Project Iceberg did not vanish with the sinking of the Violet Pillar, but instead mutated into one of the most persistent and terrifying rumors within the post-war intelligence community. Following the fall of Berlin, Allied intelligence teams from the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, OSS, discovered fragmented references to Station Nordkristall in a half-burned file cabinet in a basement near the Tiergarten. The Americans were baffled by the technical descriptions of geothermic resonance and molecular assimilation of personnel. They initially dismissed it as Nazi occult propaganda until they cross-referenced it with intercepted Soviet naval reports from 1944. The realization that both the Germans and the Soviets had witnessed a physical anomaly of this scale triggered a secret underwater search mission in the late 1940s, known as Operation Deep Freeze the Huntin. The American research team, utilizing early deep-sea submersibles and advanced sonar arrays, returned to the coordinates of the glacier's final descent. What they found at the bottom of the Arctic basin was not a shipwreck or a pile of rubble, but a massive crystalline formation that covered several square miles of the ocean floor. The formation appeared to be growing, albeit slowly, and it emitted a constant thermal signature that kept the surrounding water several degrees warmer than the rest of the deep ocean. The sonar images revealed that the structure had a complex geometric architecture that resembled the internal corridors described in Dr. Meyer's recovered logs. It was as if the base had reconstructed itself on the seabed, using the minerals from the Earth's crust to replace the ice that had melted away. More disturbingly, the U.S. Navy sensors captured a series of rhythmic acoustic patterns that were identical to the brainwave frequencies recorded by the German tracking vessels in 1943. These signals were now much stronger and appeared to be transmitting data in a complex, multi-layered code. The American cryptographers who attempted to break the code suffered from the same symptoms as the original German crew: intense migraines, auditory hallucinations, and an obsessive need to return to the water. The project was abruptly shut down in 1952, and the area was designated as a permanent maritime restricted zone. The official reason given was the presence of a dangerous underwater volcanic rift, but the internal documents warned that the crystalline structure was actively probing the American sonar systems, attempting to establish a two-way communication link. The human element of Project Iceberg remains the most haunting aspect of the entire mystery. In the 1960s, a retired Soviet sonar operator claimed that during a routine patrol near the exclusion zone, his crew picked up a series of faint, localized radio transmissions on an obsolete German naval frequency. The transmissions consisted of a single name being repeated over and over: Alistair Vance, the commander of the HMS Ardent, which had vanished in a different part of the ocean years prior. This suggested that the crystalline intelligence was not just preserving the 60 men of Station Nordkristall, but was potentially connected to other lost vessels and crews across the globe. The Arctic void was potentially just one node in a vast planetary-scale network of information storage and biological preservation that existed beneath the waves. The final classified conclusion regarding Project Iceberg is that the German thermal technology did not just encounter an anomaly. It acted as a technological key that unlocked a door that should have remained closed. By introducing high-energy geothermic resonance into the ancient ice, humanity signaled its presence to a form of life that operates on a geological timescale. The 60 men of the Project Iceberg garrison were not victims of an accident. They were the first samples taken by an intelligence that views human consciousness as a valuable resource to be archived. Today, the Arctic ice continues to thin, and researchers fear that as the glaciers melt, more of these dormant keys may be triggered, leading to further disappearances and the eventual awakening of the dark secrets hidden beneath the frozen crust of our world. What do you think? Was this a military breakthrough, or an operation they erased on purpose?